Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And it's number 190 in Sounding the Shallows.
It is, and we realised, didn't we, that the significance isn't so much in it being 190 or whatever, but in the fact that on the day that you will hear this recording, it is actually a celebration day, and it's the day of Candlemas.
Right. Which means what?
Well, Candlemas is reflecting Jesus being the light of the world. And so the idea is, well, it is a mass of candles. The idea is that you have candles,
we used to love
you light.
Candlemas, didn't we, with
absolutely.
the children and the candles. Yeah.
And you light candles and you have them in your window. But it is the celebration of Jesus being presented in the temple by Mary and Joseph. Yeah. And particularly for two very elderly people. Yeah. And our friend, who's a wonderful poet, has turned out to be rather good at limericks as well. And so here is Anna. A widow for too many years, she gives God her praises and tears. Her whole life she'll spend until at her life's end the Messiah at long last appears. So that's Anna.
Yeah.
And then there's Simeon. Hold on. Let me just get to Simeon. Here we go.
An elderly man gives a cry, the light of the whole world is nigh. Holy God, now release your servant in peace. Now that I have seen life, I can die.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for those. It was lovely and really important to remember what must have been a quite extraordinary moment for those two elderly people, but also the fact that it's celebrated in the Bible, isn't it? That little story of these two people who got it, who saw Jesus as a baby and got it, that this is it. This is the light of the world. This is the Messiah.
They're very significant people. They scared Mary and Joseph out of them.
Yes.
I mean, the things that Simeon said were really disturbing for them.
Well, that's true,
proved to be true. Now, we're very lucky because we also have an email from another extraordinarily good poet. Actually telling us a story. But it was really about last week we were talking about the relationship between imagination and faith. Yeah.
And of course, that's not a bad thing to combine with Anna and Simeon, because there was reality. They didn't make it up. It happened. They may have imagined a million times what it would be like, and then suddenly in this baby they know that it's true. But yes, I mean, this is our banana hater in chief, actually.
She does have those little problems in her life.
But what she says is that the relationship between imagination and faith, which we talked about last week, she finds both fascinating and difficult. And she talks about the fact that when she was 10, she really faced the fact that she wanted to know whether it was just her imagination or whether it was God was real. Yeah. And she said that she was going for a walk with her youth group, and they were being quiet for a little while, and then very loudly she said, "How can you tell the difference between God and your imagination?" Which I would imagine for the youth leader was a moment of sheer panic. Yes. It's such a massive question from a 10-year-old.
From an 80-year-old.
Yeah,
a 10-year-old.
But she says a bit later on in her email, she said she'd always had an extremely vivid imagination, and she didn't want to just imagine God being something that he wasn't. Yeah. She just wanted what was true. And that was the first thing, Adrian, that I thought we might just think about, because she says, I don't want to imagine into being a God of my own making. And I thought, well, what was your first response apart from anything else?
Well, a sort of stab of fear, really, because when people ask questions like that, and people ask me a lot of questions, and I sometimes retreat into the rabbit warren of there's all many ways of looking at things and experienced it.
It's all a mystery.
So there's all that stuff. Yeah, the mystery gets a lot of the blame. But also, I don't want to abandon the profound belief in me that there have been times when I have known that God has spoken to me, and I'm sure in times when he didn't, and I thought he did. But the last thing in the world I would want is to go down a road that says we'll end up with nothing, because I just don't think that's true. One of the problems we have is that the Bible, actually the New Testament, if we stay with the New Testament, is full of messages to people, and they are never vague. They are clear, while
they're the ones that are recorded, aren't they?
Yeah, but
there may have been many times when people wanted something slightly different. We know that they didn't, the people waiting for the Messiah certainly didn't see Jesus as the right shape, voice, place of birth. Really, ordinariness was not what they were looking for, and therefore that's why it's so extraordinary that Simeon and Anna both on that day, and we're
not going to hang around in a temple for that length of time waiting for nothing, are you?
But those moments when the disciples, one or another of them, knew it to be true, and those moments were the things that kept them walking with him.
Well, all I'm saying is that I think we should be open to the prospect that you could clearly hear from God.
But your mantra of being willing, wary and warm, it's a good one, Adrian, because we do need to be wary, don't we? Because sometimes when we want something so much, we can convince ourselves, we can imagine it happening, and we can convince ourselves that this has to be of God because it's so obviously what he would want.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that?
And we've seen some very difficult things happen because of that. I particularly remember in a church where we used to be, there were some parents who were having really, really terrible problems with a child, and they used to get
such a poorly child, had one of these horrendous things from birth.
That's right. And people would phone at 4 a.m. and say, God has just told me that he's going to live. And after a bit, they were comforting the comforters more than the other way around.
Well, they were, but also it did damage their faith.
They kept thinking, maybe this is it. This could be the one. When Jenny Larkham was healed years and years ago, the lady who heard the Holy Spirit say, go and pray for her, was on this occasion 100% right. And the vast number of people who'd said it before were not.
That's right.
So it's interesting. You're right, hope and optimism. Because you think, I want that child to be healed.
Yes.
And I don't see why he, she, them, they shouldn't be.
Well, we spend quite a lot of time wondering why our banana hater-in-chief.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to God about her.
Yes.
I hope you're listening, banana hater-in-chief.
But I think one of the greatest fears for this whole business of the dangers of imagination is that if you create a God in your image, if you like, using your imagination, you're inevitably going to be disappointed. That's my feeling, that the God that was created in quite a lot of the teaching, especially in the 80s and the 90s, of the swooping in and sorting everything out type of God, has caused a lot of disappointment and confusion, which is something I know we've touched on quite often, really.
Well, we had to during COVID because things got so difficult.
Yeah.
And I know that a number of people at that time hit a disappointment wall that they'd never hit before. there's no easy way around.
No, there isn't. And every now and then I remember, and again I know we'll have mentioned it before, but a very highly intelligent person, Elaine Storkey, when challenged by many other university professors as to how she could possibly believe and have faith in something that to them seems so trivial and almost silly, she said, "I have decided to believe."
Yeah.
And that's such a solid thing that you have to make a decision with faith. It isn't just swirling around in imagination, is it? And sometimes when everything seems to be going wrong, that's what you're left with. I have decided I'm going to keep walking.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the next step. So that was the first part of the email that challenged us, wasn't it?
Yep, it was.
And the next bit was the rest of her story, which is quite lovely, really. She talks about the same walk, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And how they came to a clearing where they were told that people used to worship Satan there. And she said that it was such a lovely day and they had a nice picnic, and then as they were getting ready to leave, she was thinking about God and felt it must make him very sad to look at that place. And she wanted to make God happy. And what she did was so lovely. I mean, this is this 10-year-old girl. She goes to the youth leader and she quite quietly says she thought it would be nice if they were going to do one of their youth group songs just for God, to make him happy. Quite an energetic one with lots of dancing. And they did. The audience was God.
Yeah.
Singing and dancing to the sky and doing all the actions. She says that it involved a lot of jumping about from a crouching position and then finishing with "I'm going to stand and live for Jesus," woo, or whatever. But it was the first time she was aware that you can make God happy. She said she tangibly felt God's presence, which I think was so delightful, really. She wasn't sure whether he particularly loved the dance or the song, but loved the fact that in her heart, that at 10 years of age, she wanted to make him happy.
I think a lot of people would give their right arm to know that God was happy with them and loved them and treasured the person that they are. And we know that many, many people are not sure about that.
But this reminded me of something that happened to you, not the same, but when you were writing about Hosea.
I've always, I mean, I might as well say how I feel, one aspect of how I feel about God is that I do feel an enormous compassion for God, because dealing with the amount of stuff, well, you'll hear about it in this actually, is because I've been reading Hosea, which is fascinating book in the Old Testament. It begins with something that is very much like a parent looking through a book of photographs at pictures of your children when they were young and saying, "Oh, you used to do this and I used to do that and we used to have such a great time." And it goes on to talk about how that's all gone wrong. And it intensified in me for a moment my own feelings that I often have, where I just want to get close to God and say, "Look, we are in it together. I know I'm confused and I get things wrong." But anyway, this was called "Forgive Us if we say." Forgive us if we say we want to take you in our arms, sad Father, weeping God, breathless with the storms of anger, of compassion. Fists clenched hard around your grief, around the marks, the cost, the proof. How can you give us up? How can you hand us over? Of course you never can, you never could, you never will. Burdened with perfection and with passion, lay your head down. Let us hold you for a little while. We will try to be to you what you have been to us so many times. Peace, Lord. Be a child once again. Do you remember Mary's arms? So warm, so different. Rest quietly, and soon you will be able to once again be a lion, thundering from way beyond the east, and we will come trembling from the west, we promise you, like birds, like doves, like children who have suddenly remembered who taught them how to fear and how to laugh. But just for now, forgive us if we say we want to take you in our arms, sad Father, weeping God.
I mean, it's an extraordinary piece of writing, really, Adrian, and I know there will be some people for whom that we talked about throwing things up that cause problems. That is going to cause a problem until we really start believing in what Jesus said, that God is our Father. And as soon as we really allow that into our thinking, we know that it's very easy to hurt our parents.
Absolutely.
And we also know that what they want, what gives them the most pleasure, is us wanting to make them happy. You know, so allowing those things into it, I think we can tune in to what that poem is all about. So yes, another wonderful challenge within this email, but the third one was just something that happened as this person was signing off, and she said, you know, just thinking about it all is just scratching the surface. And that brought me back to Jesus being the light of the world. And I was thinking, you know, that thing you do when you're a child and you have a special pen and you have something covered in black, or you make it yourself. You do lots of colours and you cover it all over with black wax crayons. And then the idea is, as you scratch it, you reveal the colours. And I was thinking that maybe we can find something about faith and imagination in that image, really, because if you think, I mean, some of what Jesus did was terrifyingly hard, that he saw, and he goes on and on and on with the Pharisees and Sadducees about the surface, and that actually that wasn't reality. He saw through it. He scratched that surface, and sometimes quite angrily scratched away at what was the surface to reveal what was underneath. But for the people he talked to in the Sermon on the Mount, for example, as we've called that amazing communication with people, we're talking about the opposite of that. You see yourselves, how you have been created to be by the world, but I can scratch that away, and I can see in my imagination, even before it's happened, something potentially gorgeous in terms of colour. And so thank you for that little throwaway at the end about scratching the surface. But that reminded you of something else, didn't it?
Well, I've just been reading, I've mentioned this before on some stuff we did ages ago, but we worked with kids in care for years, and I wrote a fictional book about it called Broken Windows, Broken Lives, which is about all sorts of things that happened, and all of them true at one time or another. But
yes, they're put into a fictional story.
Fictionalized,
you and I went to work in this place together in the story in order to recreate the horror of some aspects of it. You went in on your own in the story, and that was fair enough, because you so wanted to catch what that was like. But actually, we both.
It's quite horrifying to remember how difficult it was.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we applied to our thinking about these kids and the difficulty they had, and I'm sure, forgive us, we've mentioned it before, but the fact that for them, as for us actually, and anybody, life is like being in a hall of mirrors, of distorting mirrors like they used to have in the fairgrounds.
Yes, I don't know if everybody would understand that.
Each one of those mirrors can give you a tall version, a short, fat version, a wide version, an ugly version, a beautiful version. But the point of it is that each one is difficult, is different. And for these children, again, as with us really, we have a history of looking into the mirrors of home, for them, very important. Family.
Just read the poem.
Church, life, whatever. I'll read this little poem which came out of that. It's just called Hall of Mirrors. Stranded in the Hall of Mirrors, I must struggle to avoid images that cannot show me something long ago destroyed. In the darkness, in the distance, in a corner of my mind, stands a puzzled child in silence, lonely, lost, and left behind. In imagination only, in my single mirror see, clear and calm, the one reflection of the person that is me. I was reading this morning in this book about the boy we used to call Twinkle. And he was a boy who had the most incredible film star smile. And every now and then he had an incredibly bad temper. And he'd do something awful. And then after that, he would recover and you'd get the smile and he'd go off and work like mad to make up for the thing he'd done. And I always remembered Twinkle because he was as much the smile as he was the aggression. And for him, earlier in his life, some vicious mirror had lied to him, as people do to us in our lives, in the way they reflect us. And we have thought about the fact that although it's a heavy thing to handle, everyone we encounter, every time we meet somebody, we hold a mirror up, which is us, in the way we react to them. And I don't want to turn that into a horrible burden. But,
well, it is a challenge.
It is a challenge,
This email has challenged us in lots of ways. It is a challenge. How do we reflect back? How did Jesus reflect back? What did he do when he held up a mirror to people? For some people, he showed them the reality of the worst of themselves. But for so many people who needed it, he showed them his imagination for them, that they could be alive, that they could be useful, that they could be beautiful in his sight.
He was very direct with people. I always remember the woman at the well and Jesus saying, you're absolutely right, you're not married, you've been married 5 times. Because what he wanted to do next was for her to know that he knew what was in her life.
Yes, so they could get past that hurdle
so they could
quickly.
Get past that, So it wasn't just a case of saying inside you're a very thoughtful, lovely person.
No, but neither was it a case of saying, I know who you are, so go away, because I don't want to be with you at all.
No, on the contrary, it was saying, I know all that, I know about you, I know what you've done, I know what you think of yourself, but I can see what could happen next.
I could see. I can scratch just by looking at you and believing that in you is something quite different. And that comes back to Candlemas, really, doesn't it? How are we going to shine? And this is so corny, but true. To shine some light into somebody so that they can catch a glimpse.
It's a big job, isn't it?
It's a big
keep on
job.
Trying. Anyway, having completely confused ourselves and everybody else.
Yeah, but thank you for those emails.
Yes, thank you very much for the emails. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.